Okay, can you see this? Can you see the slides?
Yes, I can see, Professor.
Okay. Okay, let's go through them, and we should be recording, so anybody that would like to pick up on this could
We're
do it.
recording now.
Okay. Okay, first, the first thing is to ask if there's any questions. Is there anything that from the last few weeks, now hopefully you're beginning to feel a little bit more comfortable with the material. Is there anything that you would like to discuss, begin our discussion with? Any questions, any doubts? Anything about?
Not the material, not the material,
Yeah,
but
or
the
anything in real
quizzes.
estate. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But the quizzes, it's
The
100
quizzes,
points. My God.
yeah, no. What I did was I sent out on the WhatsApp that the quizzes. I guess I'm accustomed to every exam or having 100 points as a, and so that would be translated into A's and B's and C's, whatever. But so I combined both the discussion questions and the quizzes. So the quizzes will be worth half of the grade, or 50 points. There are 10 questions, so 5 for each question. And then the discussion would be worth the other 50. So that way, the combination of both would give you a grade. Most students did well, very well. I corrected both chapters 1 and 2. We're getting 90s and 95s. I did not challenge very much the discussion questions. They seemed fine, and the students were capturing correctly the main issues. The discussion questions, if you got it wrong, then there was nothing that I could do to help. But I will go over them today as well. So we'll go over the chapter 3 and the questions from chapter 1 and 2. But I'm asking if there's anything in general that you have any question about. Real estate in different countries is administered differently. So many of you may view this in a different way as I view it here in the U.S. and even in the state of Florida. It's different. It's even different in the counties. In the states, as you would know, that the states is divided into different counties. And each county has a different way of doing business. So not only is each state different, but each county is different. And certainly each country would be different. So there's a lot of variation in the practice of real estate. But if there's anything that you'd like to bring up regarding real estate wherever you are, or any question about the material, let's begin with that first, and then we'll just jump into the chapter. All right. Let me go.
Someone is asking the link.
Go ahead.
Someone is asking the link.
The link. Okay, the link was just posted, I see.
Oh, I see. Good.
Yeah. The link is available in Moodle also. Mike, the technical fellow, was kind enough to put a permanent link in Moodle under announcements. So you should be able to always get that. All right, let's go.
Yeah. Hard to find in the Moodle, or it's hard to open the Moodle sometimes. So maybe
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's moving the card.
all right, okay, let me, okay, we will resolve that, I guess, through WhatsApp if you have trouble getting on through Moodle, but at least let you know that it's there. All right, let's go through the material. Let's go through the chapter, then we can go through the assignments from chapter 1 and chapter 2, and then next week we'll go over the assignment for this chapter. The subject of chapter 3 is conveying real property interest. The word conveying means that you are passing your property to someone else. There's another word for that in I guess the U.S. rules of real estate, and that's called alienation. Kind of a strange word for the act of transferring property from one person to another, but the word commonly used in the real estate books here is the word alienation. There's two ways of transferring property. One is when it's done voluntarily. Some of my comments will depart a bit from the book, but any testing of material is always based on the material in the book. So don't be concerned if I say something that you just cannot find it in the text. But in any event, anything that all tested material will come from the material here. Okay, so real property can be transferred willingly, in the sense that you want to sell it, you'd like to pass it on to your children, and it also can be transferred involuntarily in cases such as bankruptcy. If you go bankrupt, the court may take away your property and give it up to someone else. If a person dies with known heirs, children, family, that is referred to as intestate in real estate. Intestate means that the property can be transferred to heirs, and the court knows who it is, so there's no problem in passing on the rights. If someone dies without a will or without any written indication of who their heirs are, then they have died. It's called involuntary alienation, and the process referred to as a word we don't normally see, escheat, ESCHEAT, refers to the process of transferring real estate when the person dies without any indication of who is the heirs. Okay, let me just correct something. I said intestate is when they die without heirs. Testate, I forgot that word for a second. Testate is when they pass with heirs, and intestate is when they pass without heirs. Okay, and one last word, and then the evidence of possession of a property is done through what is the subject of this chapter, deeds. Okay, real property is a bundle of rights. The person who owns the bundle of rights is referred to as having. Yeah.
Professor, I cannot see the slide.
Okay, you cannot see it?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to this.
Okay.
Is it in my part or?
Okay, can everyone see it, or is it just that one more?
Oh,
You
now
can.
now I can see it.
Now you can see it. Okay. So real property is a complex bundle of rights. So looking at it inversely, the person who has a bundle of rights to a property is the owner and has title to the property.
Oh, sorry, Professor. I just get back to Sarah because Sarah, I tried to open the link that you shared in the WhatsApp, but I cannot open on my laptop.
Okay.
Because I want to switch on my laptop. I don't know how can I get in my phone.
Okay, let me
Reload the
okay,
page. It keeps happening. Try again. It says here.
okay, okay, can you try it now? I don't know really what because everything has to be done through what's
Yes. It's the same. Did you send
the
in
same?
the WhatsApp?
Yes. Well, how else can I reach you? Is there any other way of reaching?
Yeah. She's here. Maybe she's listening to us.
Oh, Sarah?
Sarah in here. She's here.
Sarah, can you help us a bit? Some students don't seem to be able to access the link.
Yeah, maybe Ahmed is thinking that maybe he's knit, but why it's still the same to me again.
Hello. No, I think there is no issue in accessing the link because Ahmed has just said that he has some issues with his internet connection and he will
Oh.
join later.
Yeah, but I'm trying to open in my laptop, but I
Mhm.
can't open. Something went wrong. It's here.
The link that I have just sent.
Yes, and even Professor just sent again.
Okay, I will check this and get back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I don't like to turn off this phone. Maybe if I will turn this on, I cannot go back.
Well, let me continue to record the lesson, and then at least you'll be able to review this. You'll be able to review this when you have a moment.
Yeah, please,
All
Professor.
right.
Sorry for that interruption.
No, it's quite all right. I know it's not anyone's negligence or not trying to do it. Okay, let's. What makes it possible to convey real property, deeds, recorded instruments, titles, a number of things. But for the most part, what's possible to convey real estate is through the use of a deed. A deed is a written form of a contract, essentially, that identifies who the owner of the real estate is, and more specifically, who owns the bundle of rights associated with the property. A deed is either conveys fee simple absolute, which means that you are the owner of the property with all of the rights associated with owning real estate, or to a lesser degree, life estate, a life estate. A life estate means that you can live on the property for the duration of your life. Once that life ends, then the property reverts back to the owner. And all of this has its origin in Old English law. And I believe I mentioned it last week, where the system was such that the king owned everything. And based on how friendly you were to the king and whether he liked you or not, he conveyed upon you certain benefits, such as estates. However, once the person passed away, then the estate reverted back to the king. There was no passing of the property to heirs, to children in old England. The system didn't work that way. Now, if you maintain good relations with the king upon the passage of the person who possessed the real estate, the king may elect to give the property to an heir, but wasn't always that way, it seems. Okay, the deed is the principal conveyance of real property. It's a written contract. It can be done, again, fee simple, life estate, on condition, on easement, oil, mineral, or water rights. I did mention this last week. When you buy a property, you have the rights of the property. You have the rights to the land and to the structure on the land. But what is underneath the land, the mineral rights, what the air above the property is not always conveyed with the property. That may depend on the terms of the agreement. When passing property from one person to the other, certain restrictions might be made, and the new owner would have to legally abide by those restrictions. So that's always a condition in the conveyance of real estate. Do I have possession of the space above my structure? And do I have possession of the ground underneath it? Now, back in the old days of the English time, there was no concern over what was underneath it, except possibly for the presence of water.
Oh, Professor, can
Today,
you accept me? Can you accept me? I am just waiting here for the lobby.
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can you accept me in the
Can I
meeting?
can I
Yeah,
do what?
can you accept me because I lit my
Oh.
can you accept me, please?
Okay, can I accept you? Okay, yeah. Okay, are you in? Are you hello? Okay, if you can hear me, I'm returning to the PowerPoint presentation. It is being recorded. So again, if once the technical issues have been resolved, you at least will be able to view the recording. Okay, some of this really kind of goes back to old history. I'm not going to bother wasting time on this. A covenant is a legally binding promise. Three main types of covenants: of season, grantor has good title and right to it. Against encumbrances, no encumbrances except as noted. Covenant of quiet enjoyment, no one with a better claim to title. Okay, this again is as sort of its origin in times way before we are at this point. But when you do possess property, it means you don't have any encumbrances. There's no liens or easements attached to the property. We mentioned liens last week, and it'll come up a little bit later on, but maybe it's best if I jump in right now. We will discuss a little later on in the chapter the concept of title search, title insurance. On the text, it's on page 56. When a person buys real estate, again, I'm of course referring to how the process is here in the States. Many of you, again, are located in countries which may not observe the same processes, but here in the States, when a person buys wishes to buy a property, the buyer should request the services of an intermediary referred to as a title company. A title company is a company that will investigate the owner of the property to be sure that the current owner of the property has in fact title to that property, so that when a buyer makes an offer and the offer is accepted, that the buyer is receiving ownership from the previous perceived buyer. For example, let me give you something that can happen here in Florida, and I'm sure happened on many occasions. A person is renting a home, or a person in some way is simply living in the home, and the owner is even in a different country. That renter, we'll call him a renter, finds in a drawer in the home, let's say, a canceled check from the owner of the home. In that canceled check, it has the owner's signature and perhaps the owner's social security number. And that renter is a fraudulent person in mind. So he does something like this. He announces that that home is for sale. It worked through a realtor, and that property is listed for sale. Somebody comes along and says, yes, I'll buy this property. It's a lovely property, and makes an offer to buy the property. The renter, having seen the signature of the owner, having found it, and having found the owner's social security number, if requested, may in fact be able to sign the documents pretending that he is the owner of the property. That property then is conveyed to the new buyer, who moves in and believes that he is now in possession of this property. At some time in the future, the actual owner of the property shows up and says to the new buyer who's there, who are you? And the new buyer says, well, I'm the owner of the property. And the real owner says, I'm sorry, that's not the case. I am the owner. Well, what happened was that the renter, a friend that might be living there temporarily, fraudulently attempted to sell a property that was not his. And the buyer will actually lose, the new buyer will actually lose possession, because he did not obtain that property legally. So what can a buyer do in the future to prevent a situation like this from happening? What a buyer can do, working with his realtor, assuming the buyer is working with a real estate agent, is employ the services of a title company. As I said, this is all on beginning on page 56, what I show 56, but it's called title. What a kind of title company does is a person goes into the public records and tries to establish that the person who is attempting to sell the property is in fact the legal owner of the property. They will go to all of the governmental agencies in their databases, and they will look for evidence that the person who alleges that he is the owner is in fact the owner and has the right to convey property. Once they complete their investigation, they issue a report that says, yes, this person living in that house is the owner and can transfer the property to the new buyer. It is possible, even though it's quite rare, that the title company has been fooled and issues a report that is incorrect. In that case, part of the title company's report includes title insurance, and that insurance will protect the new owner who can regain the money that he invested in the property. So title insurance will cover the loss in the event that the title company made a mistake or what they looked at was in itself a fraudulent document. What is also related to the title company's work is that they will search to see if that home has any liens on it. Recall last week we talked about liens. A lien is a debt obligation that someone has against the property, not the owner, but the property. Okay, for example, the mortgage is a lien. If you are buying by financial contingency, you own the house superficially, but the bank is the one who really owns the house. It can sell the house in the event that you can't pay. Okay, notice that Mike is trying to help us to get everybody in, so okay, hopefully I see Mike's instructions. You have more people in. I'm not sure how many people are in at the moment. Okay, 4, it seems, 3. All right. Another example, somebody comes in and you needed a roof. You pay the roofer pay it out. In other words, you don't pay for the new roof in cash, you pay it out. Whether the roofer lends you the money or you go through a bank, the bank will put a lien on that property. That lien will remain there in the government's records until the loan to repay for the new roof is completed. Now, a new buyer may not have any knowledge that there are liens on that house. The new buyer comes in, the old buyer doesn't, the owner doesn't say anything, gets his money and disappears. And the new buyer, in fact, may not know that there's liens on that property until the bank or the mortgage company shows up one day at the door and says, you haven't paid me in months. And the guy says, why should I pay you? And he says, well, that new roof, I put that roof up and you still owe me money. And he says, well, I had no knowledge of that. Well, that new owner will still be obligated to pay because the lien is on the property. So another benefit of having a title company is that the title company will investigate any liens that are on the property. And the liens are a little bit easier to find out because they have to be recorded in the county in which the home resides, is located. So it's easy to find in the public records. Once the liens are established, if let's say there's a lien of $25,000 still remaining on the property, and the seller was supposed to get $300,000 from the sale of the property, well, then the seller will get $275,000 at closing. So the liens will be deducted from the money that the seller is supposed to receive for the sale of the home. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Defines the use, habendum clause defines the use being conveyed usually the clause defines the buyer or new owner as possessing all of the right of fee simple absolute that is inherent in that property. It could also be stated that, for example, the property goes to, as the text says, John Smith and to his heirs forever. But in any event, it simply is a clause that says who is the property, and in the event, again, the property is shared by an owner and other family members. That's a habendum clause. These are what we're discussing once again, the clauses that appear within a deed. Exceptions and reservation clause would contain any restrictions, any clauses withholding mineral or oil rights, or the creation of an easement. Okay, once again, when property is purchased or conveyed from person A to person B, there may be some restrictions that person B must obey in taking possession of the property. Any of these restrictions, for example, the original seller says that I will retain mineral rights underneath this property, knowing perhaps that there is oil beneath that property. The new buyer, if they accept the terms of the sale, accepts that the seller retains ownership of what is underneath the property, the mineral rights. A description of the property within the deed must be unambiguous. It must be very clear. There are three methods. Each method is a bit different, beginning with the original, the older way, the meets and bounds, to the more current method referred to as a plat lot. When you buy a property, you must be careful that the boundaries of that property are carefully defined. Examples happen all the time when, let's say, homes are built in a certain community. Usually in the beginning, there are no fences at all put up. Over time, families begin to put a fence around their property, perhaps for a reason to prevent neighbors from getting into the property, to prevent perhaps in rural areas animals from entering into the property. for their own pets, to dogs to escape or run away or go someplace else, and maybe even to prevent small children from walking away. What is done usually here is that a person will request a survey done of the property. Usually when communities are built, there is a survey for each lot. So a person has specific knowledge of where the boundaries are. But occasionally, getting back to the building of fences at some point, sometimes a neighbor builds a fence knowingly or unknowingly, including property from the next door neighbor. It might be an accident. It might be a voluntary act to just expand the property by a few more feet. If a few more feet may take into account a little bit better view, better landscaping, who knows what. And it's not uncommon for somebody to discover that some of their property has been taken away by the neighbor whose fence extends upon my property. Once that happens, it's a real legal mess, because if it's existed for, let's say, 20 years, it might be very difficult for the family who's lost the property to expect the neighbor to tear down the fence and move it. In some cases, that extension just becomes part of the neighbor's property, and you lose out. So what's called a survey is a good idea, to ask that it be done or request one, so that you know exactly where your property begins and where your property ends. Confirmation that the grantor, you can call that perhaps the seller, is acting voluntarily in conveying the property to the new buyer. It should be notarized and often witnessed by somebody. These rules would vary according to area, and certainly perhaps by country, but at least in the U.S. and in Florida, a conveyance of property has to be notarized and witnessed by somebody. Usually a lawyer will be okay to be a witness. Once a property has been signed away, a document, the deed has been notarized and witnessed, until that document has been delivered to the new buyer, the grantee, you still don't know that there's evidence of a sale. Examples of a failure to deliver: the deed found in the desk or safety deposit. Okay. The seller's attorney, the grantor, gives him the deed, and either the lawyer or the seller forgot to tell the lawyer, which makes no sense at all, but that deed has to be transferred over to the new buyer. Well, that may seem pretty unusual, but it certainly may happen. But the point is that the deed has to be delivered to the new owner. The concept of delivery also applies to real estate contracts. Let's say a person makes an offer to buy a property, contract is made, the seller agrees to the offer, signs the offer contract. There really isn't a legal contract until the seller returns the contract to the buyer. You may have a very big legal problem if the seller's agent calls or emails the buyer and says, okay, we got a deal. We'll take your offer. We're good. Okay, let's begin the process of closing the transaction. That may present a big problem legally when the court says to the buyer, where is the contract? Where is the evidence that the seller signed the contract? Why? What if the seller a little bit later on should receive a better offer or find out that someone is interested in the same house and will offer more money, and the seller says, wait a second, I can get more money? Okay, I'll take your offer, and I'll tell the person, the buyer, I changed my mind. The first buyer says, wait a second, we had a deal. And the seller said, did you receive an email from my agent? Did you receive anything in writing? So the same thing applies to contracts. A contract is not considered executed until the seller returns the contract to the buyer. The same thing with the transfer of a deed. Okay, in the event that you didn't get the deed and you purchased it and you were supposed to receive it, you can sue the seller and say, I gave you the money, I agreed to it, and I'm still waiting to get the deed. So a grantee has the legal power to sue. The same way in a real estate transaction, buyers and sellers are free to sue the other party if they feel that there's been an injustice done, that someone failed to abide by the conditions of the contract. This slide points out a comment of the problem of accurate boundary description is always present when someone buys a single-family home or property from someone else. It might be, again, obvious. I'm buying a property. I see a home I like. That home has a fence around the home. Why? Because the owner has a swimming pool and doesn't want people from outside jumping into the swimming pool, doesn't want wild animals to get inside the boundary of the house, doesn't want their dogs to run away and go outside of the house, so there's a fence there. To assume that just because there's a fence there would accurately indicate the dimensions or boundaries of the property is perhaps a mistake to make. That's why a buyer, even if there is a fence already in place, should request of the seller a survey or some sort of indication, perhaps from the original seller or the original developer, to know exactly how much space is available and what the boundary is. Okay, getting back now to the characteristics of the deed, a deed can be transferred voluntarily or a deed can be transferred involuntarily. Voluntarily is a normal sale from one to another. Without a deed, it can be through an easement or estoppel or dedication. Dedication occurs when a developer takes part of this property and sets it aside for, let's say, a park or walkway or whatever. Developers here in Florida, this happens all the time. They buy a big piece of property and they want to build single-family homes. Excuse me. They also set apart some space so families can interact, can go out, let's say a park, walkways, places maybe to barbecue, set aside some space. So that is referred to as dedication. The word estoppel is a bit more different. Estoppel is a legal situation. There's actually a few definitions to it. One is an estoppel statement. It's actually sort of a defense or a statement that says, you know, I am the owner. Okay, it's my property. Remember, not everything goes through lawyers, so sometimes things are done passing from one to the other, and it's really like a principle of law, and it's an attempt to establish that yes, I am the owner, and again, it's really, you don't see that very much. What is often done, the way you hear estoppel more often than here is called estoppel certificate. And let's say a person wants to buy a property, and the seller has a mortgage. So the title company, the intermediary between the buyer and the seller, the intermediary will request from the seller's mortgage company what's referred to as an estoppel letter. And that estoppel letter explains how much money the seller still owes to the bank. Because here in Florida, when a buyer buys a property from a seller that has a mortgage, that mortgage is not transferred to the buyer. The seller's mortgage is closed out, and the buyer enters into a new mortgage agreement with a bank if he or she requires financing to buy that house. So the title company, or maybe there's a lawyer that's closing their transaction for the buyer and seller, the lawyer will request of the bank that has issued the original mortgage how much money is still owed to you. And based on the terms of the mortgage, will close that. And then the buyer gets, with whichever bank they prefer to, request a new mortgage. Now, mortgage rates, as you know, go up and go down. If the original seller has a mortgage that's very low, let's say 4%, and the buyer today needs financing, today's mortgage rates are about 7.75% interest. The buyer would hope that the original mortgage at 4% can be transferred to the new buyer who'll save quite a bit of money on their mortgage payment. However, the bank would, on the other hand, prefer to issue a mortgage at a higher interest rate because they'll make more money. So there's no argument on the original bank's position to close the mortgage from the seller and hopefully maybe pick up some new business with the buyer. But that is referred to when a mortgage is assumed by the new buyer. Okay, a word here that you may not be familiar with: involuntary transfer of a deed can go through probate. The word probate, bankruptcy, divorce, condemnation is when, let's say the county or government says this building is just not fit or suitable for people, so we're simply going to bring it down, destroy it. The word probate is an interesting concept here in Florida, especially, simply because of the numerous people that are seniors, that are elderly people. Let's say Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith own a home, and they're both elderly in their 80s. Mr. Smith passes away. Mrs. Smith, on the counsel of her children, agrees to sell the home and move in with the children, one of the children. The house is put on the market for sale. A buyer comes along and wants to buy the property, and all of a sudden there's a problem. Well, what is the problem? In order to sell a property, the owners whose names appeared on the contract must sign the sales contract. The only problem is that Mr. Smith has passed away and Mrs. Smith is the survivor. When that happens, the realtors or the children, if they are knowledgeable about this, will turn to a probate lawyer. A probate lawyer is a lawyer who is skilled in the area of real estate and will request of the court that Mr. Smith's name be removed from the deed. Why? Mr. Smith is deceased. So a lawyer prepares a file. That file is then submitted to a county judge. There's a court, and the judge sits on the court. The case comes up for review. The judge opens the file and says, there's a request for change of ownership here. Mr. Smith, it says, has passed away, and the sole owner is Mrs. Smith. Let me see evidence that Mr. Smith passed away, and that file should include a death certificate, maybe some explanation as to what happened, that he died because of age, he wasn't murdered. And then the judge says, okay, everything seems to be in order. Now the deed will be changed, so it's only Mrs. Smith as the owner. Okay, when that happens, Mrs. Smith can sign the sales contract and the deal can go through. That is referred to as going into probate, a probate lawyer, a probate court. And this occurs when the names appearing on the deed must be changed so that, I wouldn't say the new owners, but that the new situation can be managed and the property can be sold to a new buyer. Now, in anticipation that something like this may happen, for example, if the adult children know that one of the parents is in very poor health, they can go to a lawyer and request that the ownership be changed, the title changed, so that, let's say, Mrs. Smith is the only one. So in the event when Mr. Smith passes away, there's no need to go to probate. You can change the title. A lawyer has to begin the process of doing it, but that can be done. The ownership can be transferred to someone else. It can legally be done. So to avoid probate, which only means that it could take a few months for the title to be changed, in order to avoid that, it can be determined that the family goes to a lawyer and says, listen, we'd like you to change the deed. Mr. Smith is in poor health. We don't want to go through probate and wait a few months for that to go through. So let's do it as soon as we can. And therefore, in the eventuality Mr. Smith passes away, we can avoid probate. So voluntary conveyance or voluntary alienation is the ordinary sale. Involuntary, picking up from the previous slide, is probate, bankruptcy can occur through any of those conditions. And moving a little slow here, we do have a, oops. Okay, different types of deeds are picking up over here, slide number 14. I'm going to try to move a little faster and ask you if you have any questions to email me any questions. We do have quite a bit of material, and I'd like to go through the at least the first chapter's answers, multiple choice answers. Okay, different types of deed: a general warranty deed, special warranty, deed of bargain, quitclaim deed. The deed that has the greatest power to it, the one that grants the new buyer all of the rights and privileges of ownership. There's no encumbrances. It's yours. No one can take it away from you. You're free to do what you want. You're free to sell it. It's called the general warranty deed. Looking at the two words, general warranty and special warranty, you would think that the special warranty is really, that's it. That's the most important or powerful deed, but it's actually the general warranty. Special warranty it pretty much includes those, but some encumbrances may be part of the ownership. Again, the seller may say, you have everything, but you don't have the mineral rights. That would be an encumbrance. Okay, these are the type of deed: special warranty, general warranty. We said season, went back to season before. Unusual terms, right? A covenant is again, it's a statement that prevents the grantor, the seller, to give the property to the seller without any restrictions. Okay, it's the ownership of real property is simply a complex bundle of rights. I think we saw that before, didn't we? Yes, kind of going backwards. Okay. Okay, this slide's a bit unusual. It says, why can't a single document, a title, never serve as proof? Well, it pretty much does. A deed serves as proof. I guess what the author is trying to say, the possibility that the deed might be, the document may be fraudulent, but a deed shows, if it shows really ownership. Other documents that might be relevant to a transaction should be placed in the public record. Okay, the statute of frauds is something that's always, it's a legal statute. It applies quite a bit to real estate. Any contract for less than 1 year can be a verbal contract. Two people can agree to sell something, shake hands, and it's considered legal. If both people said, yeah, I said I'll sell it, and the other guy said, yeah, I'll buy it. Any contract for longer than 1 year must be in writing. If you could see this very clearly, but I did send, you do have this in Moodle. I did upload of this, you can see. Okay, notice beginning where the arrow is here, the mouse, that all documents related to ownership of a property should be entered into the public records. The county that I live in, Collier County, everything is brought over to the county, which is put in a database. Everyone has access to the database, all citizens. I can check ownership, I can check liens on a property. It doesn't mean if I'm buying a property, I would attempt to do this on my own. I'd be sure I'd pay a title company to do it. They're much better at doing it than I would just checking around by myself. Plus, I can't give myself any title insurance in the event that I made a mistake or there was some fraudulent documents uploaded and I had no knowledge of it. That's why we'll leave it to a person who knows what they're doing and have them tell me that everything looks good, that these documents are legal and the ownership is owned, the seller does own the property and there's no problem. Okay, legal professional confirms. Okay, I'm sorry, here's title search. This I was explaining to you before was a title company. Leave the work of confirming the seller truly owns a property to a title company. They will do their investigation, and then they'll do what's called due diligence. It says inspection of the property for competing claims. This does not mean a physical inspection of the property. That is also done in the purchase of new property, but it's not what this slide is referring to. It simply means an inspection of all of the databases from all of the agencies that are applicable in this particular area before issuing a statement that yes, the seller owns the property and yes, you can buy it, purchase it legally. A title company, again, is an independent company. You have an interest in real estate, but you don't want to be a realtor, buying and selling. You can say, I do enjoy working with the paperwork, the files, the administration of transactions. So all you need is a license. You could become a title company and make contacts with various realtors in the area. And therefore, when a realtor has a transaction and they're looking for a title company, they can call you up and say, I have a deal. I need you to complete the transaction. And you would say, I'm delighted to do that. Bring over the contract to me and let me begin the process. Closings of transactions vary by area because it depends on how much work is done or required. Here in Florida, the usual length of time to close a transaction is about 30 days. You wouldn't say close in 28 days, but you'd leave it, let's say 30 days. If you need a mortgage to purchase a property, your realtor will suggest to you, let's put down on the contract a closing of 45 days. That should give us enough time to have the bank agree or disagree, approve or disapprove of whether they will loan you any money. In the event that you cannot complete the transaction by the closing date, you are actually in default. You do not have a valid contract. If you say, if you specify in the contract, this is the price and we'll close in 30 days, we'll close, it's November 1st today, we'll close November 30th. And you don't close by November 30th, the title company does not complete its work, whatever, you actually do not have a contract on December 1st. You can be concerned that whatever deposit you made to the seller, you may lose it. The seller says, sorry, you didn't close in 30 days, deal's off, I keep your deposit money. What a realtor would do in anticipation that the bank or somebody has not completed their work is to request of the seller an extension. Can you please give us another few days? Here's a letter from the bank. We just need another day or two to get the paperwork over to you, but everything looks good. In that case, the seller will usually say, okay, we'll give you another day or two. But legally, the federal government and the state governments here in the US abide by a rule that's called, I guess it's informal too, time is of the essence, meaning that the dates of a contract are legally enforceable, and there's no such thing as, okay, later on, yeah, I'll get it to you. Yeah, let's hope we can finish this by next week. No, it doesn't work that way. Everything has to be stated, the dates, and that's how it works. And people have lost transactions because they were not able to complete the transaction in time. Okay, chain of title, missing spouse. In Florida, husband and wife have to sign, even if they're having marital difficulties. If one wants to sell, the other isn't quite sure, you can't sell. You need both signatures of husband and wife. Getting back again to the probate, in the event that one of the spouses has passed away, the deed has to change to reflect the ownership of the surviving spouse, or else the property cannot be sold. Okay, we'll pass a little bit on some of the older forms of measuring distance, only because it may not have any relevance to you. We'll take a look at the plot map because that's the one more likely to indicate the space. Okay, the sequence, the oldest form, acceptable land, description. If wherever you're living, and I know some of you are outside the US, if you want an explanation for this, then just let me know. I'd be very happy to get back to you on this. This would be called a plot map. As you could see, the blocks, the various lots, and as part of that would be the space available for each of these lots. This is called a plot map, and it's very easily to see what is available. What is available and how, and the size of each of these lots. As you could see, some of these lots here, as I'm pointing 12, 13, 14, tend to be a little bigger. Down here, 21, 22 might be a little bit bigger, but at least this gives a better indication of size. Okay, this is the old meets and bounds. This is, it's a principal meridian running north and south, the baseline running east and west. If you notice here, right one township, right one west from the principal meridian, and then from the baseline would be 2 spaces north. This is really kind of like no one uses it anymore, so I wouldn't bother wasting your time. If you have any interest in learning a little bit further, then just let me know. I'll go over it. Okay, this is ranges, they're called. Okay. Okay, one number that often appears in real estate is 43,560 square feet. 43,560 square feet is equivalent to 1 acre. So often the size of a property, a residential property, usually is not even 1 acre, but developers may buy 100 acres, 50 acres for real estate development. Sometimes the amount of acres is relevant in, let's say, a realtor purchasing, involved in the purchase of rural land, not so much within a city dimensions, because that much property is not available for residential. But 43,560 square feet, multiply that by the amount of acres, and then you know how many square feet the developer has, and divide that by the size of the lots. Okay, this is not really relevant to us here, but it helps to determine lot size and acre size. Okay. Okay, 3 challenges: complexity, the bundle of rights, history of ownership. Okay. Okay, that's your meets and bounds. You could try to figure that one out. It's easier to do it verbally. All right. That's the PowerPoint presentation. Okay. Okay, give me a minute to get some more water. It's about 10:25. And we'll go over the test questions from the first chapter. Okay, give me just a minute or two to get some more water, and I'll be right back. The market whose tenants negotiate rent and other terms with property owners or managers is referred to as a user market. Hello?
Hello, Professor.
Yes.
Yes, unfortunately, I was not able to do the first 2 assignments due to work obligation. I was wondering if I can get an extension.
Yes, that's okay. Sure. That's not a problem.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. First question, a market where tenants negotiate rent and other terms with owners or the managers is referred to as a user market. I probably wouldn't ask you that because I've never really heard that expression used in all my years in real estate. Why that not would be called a housing market is because notice the question says a market whose tenants negotiate rent. If they negotiated the sale of their property as well, then it would be called a housing market. But notice that it's only the rental market that he's referring to. And everything that we reviewed today, the conveyance of real estate from one person to the other refers to the sale of property, not to the rental of property. Okay, number two, the market which required rates of return on available investment opportunities is referred to as the capital market. Okay, same alternative answers, but now we're talking about investment opportunities and instruments of investment. That would be called the capital market. Number three, the actions of local, state, and federal governments affect real estate values. D, through all of the above. Primarily through user markets, capital markets, taxation, through all of the above. For what portion of households own their own home? 4 would be B, approximately 2/3. I don't know how recent this number is. I don't know how the events of this last few years with COVID, economic conditions, the economy in the U.S. continues to remain strong. The ownership, the rates of ownership, again, I have no way of confirming this number. I could only use Florida as a reference, and certainly in Florida, that the percentage of home ownership has been increasing over time as more people approach retirement. The group of adults referred to as baby boomers. Baby boomers are those born shortly after World War II, are now into their retirement and moving south, moving to the warmer climates of Florida. I have seen recently statistics indicating the amount of people who have left other states, that other states have been realizing a decline in their population. Florida continues to grow. So if this proportion is to be applied nationally, well, it could be true. In certain states, however, it may not be applicable, but most likely in Florida, it's okay. 5 of the following asset categories, which has the greatest aggregate market value? Number 5 would be non-government real estate. This applies to everything that that is owned by you and I, by regular people. Of the following, which is the greatest aggregate total value of real estate? Would be non-government real estate. All of the real estate owned by citizens. If you apply the answer from question 4, which percentage of households owns their own home? And the answer is evidently B, 2/3. So that's like saying 66% of this country's over 300 million people, but of course divided into households. Let's say a household is at least 3. You could have 90 million, 100 million households with 3 people, at least. Okay, 90 million households, 2/3 of them, so let's say 60 million people approximately own their own home. That's why the non-government real estate would be the correct answer. Number 6, storm water drainage systems are best described as improvements to the land. Water drainage is actually quite common here in Florida, where we can get excessive quantities of rain during certain seasons, as well as getting hit by some storms such as hurricanes during the hurricane season. This would be an addition to the property and would be considered an improvement. Not everyone has it, but in many of the developments, the development is designed such that water would run off from the level of the house into lower lying areas, just kind of take the water away, and all of that would lead into certain canals or lakes. We have lakes every place you would look for in Florida. People love them. People come down because of the lakes. But they also are referred to as retention lakes. Retention meaning that they are designed to retain excess water. All right, number 7 among the 4 categories, which is the largest asset category? Number 7 would be A, housing. 8, real estate markets different from other asset classes by having 8 would be D, homogeneous product. Okay, always be careful with multiple choice questions when it says except or other than, something like that. So all of the other characteristics are acceptable. It is a local market. It is high transaction costs. It is segmented. And it is not homogeneous. All homes are different. All locations are different. Florida, again, not all homes are the same or different. Many complexes, all the apartments are the same or homes are the same dimensions. But for the most part, it's meant that with each state and each area that the home is somewhat different. Number 9, which of the following is not important to the location of most commercial properties? 9 would be C, access to school. If the word had been is not important to the location of most residential properties, then that would certainly be availability of schools. But because they're talking about residential commercial properties, businesses are concerned about being close by to residential communities, or the people that they do business with. For instance, if it's a bank, you'd certainly want to be close to businesses. If you were selling pizza, you'd probably be like to be next to a residential community. But commercial properties aren't too interested in how many schools are nearby. And number 10, which of the following attributes of a home are the most difficult to observe and value? That would be location attributes. All right, let me move on in the remaining time. Let me see if I can get to chapter 2's questions. Okay, these are the multiple choice questions for chapter 2. Let me go through them. If you have any questions, just let me know. Speak up. Okay, one, which of the following is not a form of property right? D, license. The word license does have meaning in many areas. Realtors have to be licensed. Title companies have to be licensed. Lawyers have to be licensed. Accountants have to be licensed. But there's really no application in the area of, let's say, a property right. In real estate, yes, it has some significance, license, but in property, it doesn't really have any significance. Number two, which of these easements is most likely to be an easement in gross? D, power line easement. Three, rules used by courts to determine whether something is a fixture include all except C, law of capture. A question like this then implies that the other alternatives are in fact valid to the area fixtures. Intention of the parties. Did the owner intend for this to be immovable, or did the owner intend to remove the fixture upon departing the home? I may have mentioned last week an example of a beautiful chandelier that was present when a prospective buyer went to a home to look at it and saw that chandelier and said, "This is a beautiful chandelier." To buy a home just because you like the chandelier is probably not really a very good idea, but the buyer thought that the chandelier was going to be part of the home and was very disappointed when they walked into the home the first day and saw it was gone, and very angry at the realtor because they wanted somebody to blame, and they felt the realtor was the first person to blame. But understanding what fixtures are is beneficial to any buyer or seller of real estate. A fixture can be removed, and what the seller did was simply remove the beautiful chandelier and replace it with something that wasn't as expensive. Now, a way to deal with this is for the realtor to write down on the contract that chandelier in the living room is included in the purchase of the product of the home. Now, the seller may reject that and say, nope, the fixture goes with me. Even if that happens, at least the prospective buyer is not surprised when they walk into the home the first day and see that chandelier is gone. So fixtures can be very problematic in the sale and purchase of homes. The question doesn't refer to, the question refers to a fixture, but similar to fixtures would be appliances. A homeowner has a very expensive, almost commercial stove because the seller enjoys cooking and often cooks for friends or has a big family. Prospective buyer walks in and sees this very expensive stove oven, assumes it will remain with the home upon purchase, walks in the first day and sees something from a regular department store. Again, the way to deal with either a fixture or an appliance that a buyer really likes is to include that in the contract and have the seller accept it or reject it. Now, from the seller's perspective, if that home has been on the market for really quite some time, the seller is anxious to sell, but has been unable to do so, and sees that the buyer has specifically requested that that stove be there, a seller could say something like, well, I am going to make a nice profit on the sale of my home, so I'll give the buyer the stove, rather than lose the possibility of the buyer walking away, or to avoid the possibility the buyer walks away or does not go through with it. I'll leave him the stove. I'll simply buy another one because I'm making a nice profit on the sale of my home. But the way to deal with something like that from the perspective of a realtor is to include that in the contract. Number 5, which forms of co-ownership can best be described as normal ownership? And that would be A, tenancy in common. Always remember, when it comes to the topic of co-ownership or group ownership.
Professor, the slide is not moving.
I'm sorry?
The slide is not working.
This
Is
one?
it? It's in chapter 3 only.
No, I'm on chapter 2, the multiple choice questions. You can't see them?
No, I cannot see.
Okay.
Ahmed, can you see?
Well, in any event, if you, what I'm giving you is the answers to the questions that are in the book. So if you have your book, just I did, when I corrected the assignments, I indicated which were the correct answer. But being that this is just the test questions, if you want to open your book, if you have access to it, you may have an e-copy. But if you can join me, you can view the questions. I have page 42 in my book, but it's at the end of chapter 2. Well, let me get back. We just have a few minutes remaining. Which type of co-ownership or group ownership is considered normal ownership? And the answer is A, tenancy in common. Always remember, in dealing with co-ownership, the key consideration in co-ownership, meaning 2 more people own the property, is what happens if one of the owners wishes to sell or one of the owners passes away. In the case of tenancy in common, if it's 2 friends or 3 friends that invested in an investment property here in Florida, all 3 of them live in Chicago, and they wanted a place in Florida so that they can come down maybe together to play golf, or they can rotate so each family could come down and enjoy some time, and then some other time the other family comes down. If one of the original owners passes away, what happens to the ownership share of that person? In tenancy in common, the ownership share or participation goes to the heirs, goes to the descendants of that owner. Okay, what could happen that might not be favorable? Well, 3 friends, the one of the friends dies and his share goes to his wife. His share goes to children. And the other owners don't like that, don't like his wife, or don't like the kids, or don't like anything that they wish to do with the home. If a married couple have their deed worded that their ownership is tenancy in common, then if one of them passes away, that ownership does not go to the surviving spouse. It goes to the descendants, the heirs of the person that passed away. Now, what could happen that's not so good in this case? Well, especially here in Florida, where you have South Florida, where you have an older community, an older demographic. Very often, both husband and wife are in their second marriage or third marriage. And there are children from different marriages. And husband or wife don't necessarily have favorable relationships with one of the children from the husband or the wife, earlier marriages. Therefore, then, if one of the two owners passes away and the ownership goes to someone that the survivor does not like, does not care for, does not have any communication with, then there could be problems. In order to ensure that the passage of one of them, that the ownership goes to the survivor, that means that the deed has to be worded that this co-ownership is joint tenancy, or tenancy by the entirety. In this way, the passing of one of the owners, his or her share goes to the survivor. And the survivor, the husband or wife that survives, does not have to deal with the family of the deceased. Now, when the second owner passes away in time, well, then the ownership of the entire property then is divided according to the instructions that the survivor has left to convey the property to somebody else. Okay, this is why, again, here in Florida, where you have an older demographic and also a situation where husband and wife may be in their second, third, or I'm not even trying to be funny, but fourth marriage. Well, one was in, this is the first or second for one and the third and fourth for another. That the heirs or descendants are not all treated equally or as pleasant to deal with as others. And a desire to exclude, at least initially, when one of the spouses passes away, it can be done. It cannot be avoided when the second spouse passes away. As a legitimate descendant or heir, that person is entitled to something unless it was specified in a will that one particular person who's been very difficult or a criminal would not get anything. Okay, number 6. Which of the marriage-related forms of co-ownership gives each spouse one interest in the fruits of the marriage? That's called community property. This is the moment it says which of these marriage-related forms, even though it actually could be tenancy by the entirety, but the book says community property. The 1/2 interest is Florida. In Florida, that's the legal separation, 1/2. If one passes, or if a couple wishes to divorce, each one gets 1/2. This is an odd question. I would have selected tenancy by the entirety because that's a marriage-related form of co-ownership, but I would have been wrong myself on that one. Number 7, which of these liens has the highest priority? 7 is C, property tax. Property tax, even if federal tax was there, the first priority would be the property tax. The property tax applies to that community. The law is saying if we have to collect, we have to sell a property to pay back debt, the first one who should get paid is the community itself. The community itself has to maintain the community, the lights, the water, the condition of the roads, everything associated with the community itself. It's like saying, well, if we have to sell a house or a person passed away and has debt, we have to sell the house. We give it to the county first or the community because they need the money. Mechanics lien was anyone who did work on the house. They're going to have to wait, as well as any second mortgage. Number 8, restrictive covenants for a subdivision can usually be enforced by D, A, and B, but not C. 9, timeshare programs can involve which of the following claims or interests? 9 is E, all of them. Fee simple, leasehold, license, condominium, all of these above. A timeshare is a purchase in a property that you could only use for a certain period of time during a year. Timeshares have gone up and gone down in popularity. I know a few people that own timeshares in certain areas in the Caribbean, hotels, whatever, which entitles them to, let's say, a week in that particular community or hotel free of charge. The only thing they would pay for is their food, but the hotel is free. The timeshare could be anywhere from, let's say, $5,000 or $10,000 plus maybe some annual fees, but it entitles you to, let's say, a week or 2 weeks of free hotel in a particular location. You pay for the food, but you get the hotel for free. Every condominium buyer needs to know the details of which document, D, A, and B, but not C, the condominium declaration, the bylaws, the proprietary lease doesn't mean anything, so it would be D. All right. Okay, we reviewed chapter 3 today, and we reviewed the short answer questions, the multiple choice questions for chapter 1 and 2. Next week, we will discuss chapter 4 and then review the multiple choice questions pertaining to chapter 3. If you have any questions, please let me know. The class is communicating with one another through WhatsApp. If you have a question or want to send me something, just send me a text on WhatsApp that you have sent me a message through email, through Windsor US email. I'm not getting anything in that account, so I neglected to look at it for a few days, and then I did find a message from one of the students. I apologize for that, but it's not the forum we're using, but for messages or questions and you want a personal answer, something that the class is not interested in or not relevant for the class, then simply tell me you sent me an email, and I'll look at it right away, and then get back to you with a response. Okay. If there's any questions, again, feel free to email me. You should have the PowerPoint presentation to chapter 4. If it's not in Moodle, I'll do it over the next day or two. You'll be able to review that. Again, if you have any questions, to please let me know. If you see anything in real estate in your area, something you have a question about, feel free to let me know or bring it up in class. All right, have a good week, and see you all next week at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, have a
Thank
good
you.
day as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.